Hey everybody, today we're looking at measuring the change in prices within an economy. And when those prices are going up, we call that inflation. And when prices are going down, we actually use the term deflation. And so we want to talk about how do we measure this change in price. And in order to do that, we need to introduce a concept known as a price index. And we'll talk a little bit about what that is and how it's calculated. And we'll talk about how to calculate the rate of inflation if prices are going up or the rate of deflation if the prices are going down. And we'll look at trying to identify who wins and who loses when prices are going up or if prices are going down. So first we start with the idea that you can't tell what the trend in the economy is by looking at any one particular product. If I look at the price of LCD TVs, then I would say, well, the price of things in the economy must be going down because it used to cost $1,500 in 2005 to get an LCD TV. And by the late 2000s, it was only $374. So if I'm looking at that product, then I say, well, the prices must be going down. But then if I look at gasoline, then I'd say, well, maybe not. Maybe prices in the economy are actually going up because if I look at the price of gasoline, in 2005, it's about $2 a gallon. When I look at it in 2020, it's nearly $3 a gallon. By 2022, it's in excess of $3 a gallon. So if I look at the price of gas, and then maybe I say, well, the price of goods in the economy must be going up. And the answer is, I don't know. Just because one's going down and one's going up, what's the general trend? That's difficult to say. So we need a measure to help us get a grasp on what's the sort of general tendency of prices. That vehicle is what we call a price index. And what we're looking for is to try and calculate what's known as the aggregate price level. What are prices doing on the whole? Recognizing some are going up and some are going down, but what's the general trend overall? And we can do that by creating what's known as a price index. And a price index is based on what's known as a consumption bundle. We can look and say, what is, for example, the typical family in America buying? And we can construct this bundle based on the type of goods they purchase and the number of goods that they're purchasing. And then we could create, based on that information, a number, an amount that the typical family is paying to support themselves in a given year. And if we keep that consumption bundle constant, and then calculate it based on new prices every single year, then we can see that there's a general change in the cost of that set bundle of goods. And so if that set bundle of goods is becoming more expensive over time, we say there's inflation. If that set or bundle of goods is getting less expensive over time, we would say there is deflation. And the price index is where we will take the cost of that bundle and do a ratio. We'll take the cost of the bundle in this given year and divide it by the cost of the bundle in a base year. And whatever the base year is up to you. You can set whatever base year you want. But we'll take the cost of this year's bundle, divide it by the base year's cost, multiply by 100, and get a number. And then we can use that number to measure the percentage change in overall prices. And we'll call that either inflation if prices are going up or deflation if prices are going down. So let's take an example. We could create a price index for what it costs for people to go swimming as a recreational sport. Right? We could say that the typical swimmer needs 3 pairs of goggles, 1 pair of fins, and 2 suits during the course of the year. And we can then say, we can look at a table and say, well, the prices in 2021 were $10 for goggles, $8 for fins, $25 for suits. And for 2022 is $11 for goggles and $6 for fins and $35 for suits and so on. And we could then calculate the cost of the bundle in 2021 and in 2022. And we could see then how did overall prices change? Because you'll notice the prices went up for goggles and suits, but went down for fins. So I could go in and say in 2021, the cost of this basket of goods was $88. And I could say that the cost of the same basket of goods in 2022 was $109. And say, okay, well, it now costs us $21 more, but what is that in percentage terms? And this is where I use my price index. So I can then calculate my price index for 2021. I take the current year divided by the base year times 100. That gives me an index of 100. For 2022, current year price $109 divided by the base year price $88 times 100 tells me I'm at 123.9. I can then take these index numbers and calculate a percentage change to tell me how much prices are rising from one year to the next. And that's really what we're measuring when we talk about inflation, is when prices are increasing, when aggregate prices are increasing over time, we have inflation. And the way we calculate the percentage is straight percent change. New value minus old divided by old and multiply by 100. So in our example with the swim stuff, the index number for 2022 was 129.9. The index number for 2021 was 100. So I would do this percent change calculation, the new value minus the old divided by the old multiplied by 100, and I would end up with 23.9% increase. Some prices are rising, some are going down, but overall the average price of this basket of goods is increased by 23.9% from one year to the next. And why does this number matter? Because it tells us how our real wages are being impacted. Our purchasing power is being affected by changes in overall prices. In this case, this 23.9% increase in the price of the basket of goods for swimming means that I have less purchasing power this year compared to last year because everything costs me more. Now, another measure we could use other than a consumer price index, like I've just shown here, is what they call the GDP deflator. It's very similar. It's also measuring changes in price, and it's also a ratio. For GDP deflator, what you would do is take the nominal GDP, divide by the real GDP in a given year, and multiply by 100. And that will sort of... Now, knowing the inflation rate then helps us determine who's harmed or who is helped by changes in price. So one way we can look at this is in terms of borrowing, right? If I take out a loan, I have to pay a nominal interest rate on the loan. If I have a fixed rate loan where the rate that I owe in interest stays the same through the life of the loan, then that's sort of my nominal interest that I have to pay. So if I take out a loan to buy my house and I'm paying 3%, that's my nominal rate. I'll pay 3% every single month for the rest of the term of the loan. But inflation impacts the value of the payments I'm sending to the bank. And so therefore there's the nominal rate I'm paying, but then there's sort of the real rate. What's the actual cost of my payments or value of my payments over time when prices in the economy are changing? And what we find is when you are borrowing money, the higher the rate of inflation, the better off you are as a borrower, because how much you are paying in terms of interest in real terms gets smaller. So if I have a nominal interest rate of 3% on my house and inflation is 2%, then really I'm only paying 1% interest in real terms. And if the inflation rate were 3% or 4%, then suddenly the real inflation or real interest rate I'm paying turns negative. And so another way to look at this, not just with loans, would be with pay increases. If I'm a teacher and I get 4% increase in my pay, but the price of goods last year increased by 5%, then really what I'm looking at is I have more money in my checking account. I have more money coming in every single month when I get paid, 4% more. But everything costs me, or not everything, I guess, but overall products are costing me 5% more to purchase than before. And so I really have experienced not a pay increase of 4%, which was in nominal terms, but in fact a real pay cut of 1%. So that's where we start using inflation to sort of identify who's winning, who's losing, and what impact does it have on my purchasing power. And in fact, we could take just a moment to look at some examples of winners and losers to hopefully get a better sense for this when it comes to inflation. In general, when there's inflation, borrowers win, because if you're to borrow $1,000 today, that $1,000 you're paying back to the bank has less purchasing power tomorrow due to inflation. At the same time, if borrowers are winning, that means that savers are losing because the money you have in the bank is sitting there earning a certain percentage rate. And in today's modern banking world, it's less than 1% increase. But if prices are rising by 2 or 3%, then your money that's in the bank is losing purchasing power over time. And the more inflation there is, the bigger the impact on your purchasing power. And so you're losing increasingly more value when you have money saved in the bank when there is inflation. We can look at a couple of specific examples. For example, we could have our friend Lucy, the high school senior, who wants to go to prom and has been saving money to buy a dress for prom. And she's saved based on the idea that her older sister only spent $200 in 2015. And so she put together a budget. She's going to save $200 in order to do all the things her sister did. But the problem is, because of inflation, she's going to need more than $200 to do all those activities. And so Lucy is hurt by inflation. We could look at Bernie. He's a bank president, and the bank president is trying to decide what the nominal interest rate should be on loans. And so maybe he looks into the future. He expects 2% rate of inflation. So he's calculated that into his loans. And so let's say he gives out a nominal interest rate of 5%. Well, if there is deflation, or I guess disinflation, the rate of inflation is shrinking, then Bernie is actually very happy by that. Bernie loves when there's less inflation than he expected, because he's going to end up with more purchasing power in real terms than he had anticipated. And we can figure that out by using that formula we had, nominal minus inflation equals real. He was expecting a 5% nominal rate of interest and a 2% rate of inflation. So in his mind, a 3% real rate of return is coming his way. But because inflation is less than he expected, he's really going to end up with a 4% return in real terms. And that's a much better situation for the bank president to be in. Now, he's happy because inflation is less than expected. The borrower, of course, is upset by this because now they're paying the bank more in real terms, in terms of purchasing power, than they had anticipated. Finally, we could look at Elmer, and Elmer is a retiree, and he's putting money into the bank for savings. And when inflation drops from 2% to 1%, Elmer's super excited. Elmer's really happy by that because he is losing less purchasing power than he had anticipated. If he was expecting 2% and it's only 1%, that means that his money is losing value, but not as much as he thought it would be, and therefore he's coming out ahead of where he expected. So inflation impacts different people differently depending on whether you're borrowing and having to pay back, or whether you're the one who is being paid back and lending out money, whether you're a saver or a spender. And so hopefully you get a little bit more practice with that in the problem sets. We'll talk more in class if you have any questions, and we'll see you then.